How should Canada deal with China?
I think that, it's important to approach it in whichever way is, it's not going to create any conflict. I think that's a big thing. I've heard a lot in the news that there's been a lot of conflict and like espionage with China. So I think they should just deal with it in whichever way is not going to escalate any of our situations right now.
Oh, I would start expelling the ambassador. I would definitely take drastic measures about it. I mean, they've been interfering with us for a long time. They're buying our natural resources. Now they're interfering with elections. We knew about that. This government knew about it, but they ignored it. There's a lot of things we can do.
So to be honest with you, I think anybody who interferes in our elections, and I don't know who leaked it and what, and I wasn't here. It was a big talk at lunch today I was at, and I was kind of not knowledgeable on it. But I think anybody who interferes with our elections externally, we should take proactive actions against. But I think our proactive action should be holistic versus piecemeal. We are a small nation, big geography, we're 40 million people, and we should be very systematic in our approach with our allies on that.
Well, the first question that we should really ask is, do we really live in a democracy? That's the real question. But really, I don't think China is making a big difference. It is what it is.
Oh, I think just more and more keeping our distance and keeping away and continuing to further our investigation of possible or probable election interference and manipulation.
I think this country should deal with China cautiously, but I think that nothing is ever black and white. So we need to have nuance and understand that if we continue with us versus them mentality, that won't benefit anyone, China or Canada.
Carefully. Honestly, I think the approach of the current appointment of, I forget his name now. Yes, David Johnson is a very good move. And then we'll see where it goes from there in terms of the inquiry and what happens through this public process.
The government needs to really do a better job at explaining to Canadians what's happening with the relations, because especially with the election interference we're seeing now, it seems they're not doing a very good idea of telling Canadians what's actually happening.
Well, I think you have to be careful because China, controls a lot of the world economy, but I still think we should take a tough stance and defend Canada wherever we can. So if we have to push back a little bit, I know we're limited because we don't have as much power in the world stage, but I think we should use what resources we have to protect our position.
So I can't tell you how we should deal with China, but I do think we should take interference in elections seriously from all quarters, not just China, and really try to figure out what's going on and how to prevent it and not play political games around it.
We need to hold the course. I think Trudeau has the right idea. I think I agree with them being a little stern with them because I don't think it's a country that we should let bully us.
Like Canada stood up for themselves against big countries before. We've stood up to the Americans when we had to, and it's no problem standing up to other big countries like China right now. It's our time to stand up maybe and stand up for ourselves and make sure that our way of living is what's going to happen in our country. So.
We don't want to be enemies with China or vice versa. Huh? I think we should just be family oriented. We're all sharing the same lands. I think that we should be supporting and walking together in a better future for those young ones.
I don't think there'll be any significant change in our China policy because they are too large of a market for Canadian companies not to put influence on politicians. So the way we deal with China is by creating term limits and creating politicians that actually care about the people, not about keeping themselves in power.
Probably the same way the United States under sanctions. I believe China is actually becoming a global threat.
I think Canada should try to make more stuff itself, like the things, especially the things that are important for the people, like medications and vaccines, but other things too, to be less dependent on what China does. And it's good for our own economy too.
And I feel like if China has these police stations that we're talking about, they're terrorizing their own people. Now, if they want to do that in their country, that's fine. But we have a human rights system in our country, and it's not fine. And it's time for our Prime Minister and it's time for our politicians to stand up and say, not in my house.